and welcome to Jazzology, presented by Savage Content. I'm your host, Willard Jenkins, giving two jazz fans the opportunity to compete against each other for a chance to win $100. 2024 NEA Jazz Master saxophonist Gary Bartz made a 1968 record titled Another Earth. Who was the trumpet player on that record? Was it A, Woody Shaw, B, Charles Tolliver, C, Eddie Henderson, D, Jimmy Owens, or E, none of the above?
Wow. Okay. So I'm pretty sure just from seeing a remix sort of this band, even though Woody and Eddie were in the same era, and that's all of them actually, I think the answer is B, Charles Tolliver.
That is correct. The trumpet player on Gary Bart's 1968 record, which was on the Milestone label, titled Another Earth, was indeed Charles Tolliver. NEA Jazz Master vocalist Sheila Jordan moved to New York City in 1951 and studied with which of the following master musicians? Would that have been A, Charlie Parker, B, Charles Mingus, C, Lenny Tristano, D, Duke Jordan, or E, George Russell?
Oh, Sheila Jordan. Love her vocals. Love her vocals. And I'm trying to go back in my memory of memories. I've read this somewhere, but I mean, we're talking, I probably read this 10 years ago somewhere. And I'm trying to remember where. I mean, Bird's Bird, which is fantastic. Mingus was known to do some of that sort of stuff, as was George Russell, as he came up with his own kind of musical theories and things like that. Duke Jordan, fantastic pianist, as was Lenny Tristano. Tristano had his own school as well, with Lee Konitz and Warren Marsh, Billy Bauer, cats like that. So I'm trying to make some deductive reasoning going on here in my head. I don't know why. My gut's telling me it's C, Lenny Tristano, but it could be any number of other folks. So I'm going to go with C, Lenny Tristano.
That is correct. National Endowment for the Arts Jazz Master saxophonist Kenny Garrett, who, as Todd suggested, is at the Keystone Corner all weekend performing with his band. Kenny Garrett's tribute album, Pursuance, the music of John Coltrane, included in the personnel Pat Metheny on guitar, Rodney Whitaker on bass, and who played the drums on that album? Was it A, Ralph Peterson, B, Brian Blade, and C, Ronald Bruner has been ruled out, D, Jeff Tane Watts, or E, none of the above?
Well, I can honestly say that this album is one of the albums, being a saxophonist, that I spun over and over and over and over and over again, and loved every minute, from the blistering solo by Pat Metheny on Lonnie's Lament to the break that Kenny Garrett does on Liberia to the complete renovation to Giant Steps on that album. So I happen to know that the answer out of all these fantastic drummers is B, Brian Blade.
That is correct. Brian Blade was the drummer on Kenny Garrett's tribute album, Pursuance, the music of John Coltrane. All right, Nathan, 2024 NEA jazz master, pianist, and composer Amina Claudine Myers once made a recording with which of the following guitar players? Would that have been A, Vernon Reid, B, Bill Frisell, C, James Blood Ulmer, D, Jamaluddin Tekuma, or E, none of the above?
Amina Claudine Myers. Fantastic artist in her own right. And these are some major players that are choices here. Vernon Reid, of course, with In Living Color. And then you've got Bill Frisell, who's literally done everything with everybody. And even James Blood Ulmer and Jamaluddin Tekuma, who are related in, discography to the great Ornette Coleman. So, and his primetime band and all that. But I'm trying to go through these choices. And I think that I'm not familiar with this record, so I'm going to be upfront about that. But I think that the answer would be E, none of the above.
That is incorrect. And Brian Backus with an opportunity to steal the question. I'll repeat the question, Brian. I'll repeat the question. 2024 NEA Jazz Master pianist composer Amina Claudine Myers once made a recording with which of the following guitar players? Would that have been A, Vernon Reid, B, Bill Frisell, C, James Blood Ulmer, or D, Jamaluddin Tekuma, and E, none of the above, has been eliminated?
So, very interesting. I don't know the recording. I don't think I remember the recording, but the person that I would think most likely, just in terms of the era and when they were on the scene at the same time, at least in New York, it wouldn't be Vernon and it wouldn't be Bill so much. They weren't really in the same circle at that time. Jamaluddin either. I think it would be James Blood Ulmer. So I'm going to go with James Blood Ulmer.
That is correct. It was James Blood Ulmer who recorded with Amina Claudine Myers. Caleb, in 1972, NEA Jazz master Randy Weston made a record for the CTI label that was titled Blue Moses. That record featured Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, Hubert Laws on flute, Billy Cobham on drums, Ron Carter on bass, the usual CTI suspects, and Who on saxophone. Would it have been A, Stanley Turrentine, B, Joe Henderson, C, Joe Farrell, D, Grover Washington Jr., or E, Hank Crawford?
Wow. I wish that I knew this record. That would make things quite a bit easier.
You should.
Yeah, I should know this record. I should know this Randy Weston recording. CTI. So much production, so big thoughts over there on CTI in the 70s.
Yes,
and
Sebesky arrangements.
Yes, big thoughts. And and I don't think it's Hank Crawford because I feel like it's going to be a tenor player.
Okay.
Because alto and trumpet is just less common, especially in these kinds of productions. So, and then Grover. Okay, I'm gonna go with C. Joe Farrell.
That is incorrect, and Nathan will have an opportunity to steal the point. Nathan.
Yes, sir.
Herbie, no, what do I mean, Herbie? In 1972, NEA Jazz master Randy Weston made a record for the CTI label titled Blue Moses that featured Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, Hubert Laws on flute, Billy Cobham on drums, Ron Carter on bass, and Who on saxophone. Would that have been A, Stanley Turrentine? B, Joe Henderson has been eliminated. C, Joe Farrell. D, Grover Washington Jr. Or E, Hank Crawford?
Now, I do remember this cover. This was a blue and red cover.
Absolutely. You got that.
And yeah. And it had like one of the bushiest mustache beard combinations I've ever seen on a record cover. I do remember that. And while I agree with Caleb, I think this is a much more of a tenor and trumpet affair. Grover was very versatile. He played them all. But I think it's between Stanley, Joe, and Joe. So can you tell me again real quick which one is eliminated?
Joe Henderson was eliminated.
Joe Henderson was eliminated?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm going to have to go with A, Stanley Turrentine.
That was a good guess, Nathan, because, Stanley Turrentine did make a lot of records for CTI, and Creed Taylor and Don Sebesky, they had kind of a stable of musicians that performed on so many of their records, because when you look at that record, that Blue Moses record, I mean, it's Billy Cobham, Ron Carter, Hubert Laws, Freddie Hubbard, those were all part of the CTI stable of musicians. And so was letter D, Grover Washington Jr., who played tenor, alto, and soprano saxophone. NEA Jazz master vocalist Sheila Jordan recorded the folk song, You Are My Sunshine, with which band leader? Would that have been A, Woody Herman, B, Gil Evans, C, Duke Jordan, D, George Russell, or E, Lee Konitz?
A, Woody Herman.
That's incorrect. Tyler has a chance to steal the point. Tyler, in 1962, NEA Jazz master vocalist Sheila Jordan recorded the song You Are My Sunshine with which of the following band leaders? And A, Woody Herman has been eliminated. B, Gil Evans. C, Duke Jordan. D, George Russell. Or E, Lee Konitz?
I'm going to go with B, Gil Evans.
That is incorrect. Sheila Jordan recorded You Are My Sunshine with D, George Russell. Okay, Kiana, in 2022, NEA Jazz master, saxophonist, and flutist Charles Lloyd made 3 trio records for Blue Note Records. The one that was titled Ocean included guitarist Anthony Wilson and Who on piano. Was that A, Brad Mehldau, B, Jason Moran, C, Bobo Stinson, D, Gerald Clayton, or E, none of the above?
All right. It is one of these. I'm going to eliminate E. None of the above. I think I'm going to go with, because I'm not entirely sure here. I don't believe it was Brad. I'm going to go with D in this case, Gerald Clayton.
That is absolutely correct. Woo. Amongst the 3 trio records that Charles Lloyd made in 2022, the one titled Ocean Trio included Anthony Wilson on guitar and Gerald Clayton on the piano. You are correct. In 1964, NEA jazz master saxophonist Charles Lloyd joined whose band? Would that have been A, Chico Hamilton, B, Cannonball Adderley, C, Charles Mingus, D, Babatunde Olatunji, or E, none of the above?
Wow, so 64.
Yes.
Well, I know he played with Chico, and I know he played with Cannonball. I don't know about Babatunde. I'm going to go with B, Cannonball Adderley.
That is correct. In 1964, he did indeed join Cannonball Adderley's band and made a Cannonball Adderley sextet. And yes, he did play with Babatunde Olatunji. But
I didn't know that.
But he did join Cannonball Adderley's band in 1964. Maurice White, who was the founder of the band Earth, Wind, and Fire, once played drums with which of the following NEA jazz masters? Would that have been A, Ahmad Jamal, B, Ramsey Lewis, C, Herbie Hancock, D, Horace Silver, or E, McCoy Tyner?
B, Ramsey Lewis.
That is correct. Maurice White was once a member of the Ramsey Lewis Trio. Maurice White, he was a wonderful trap drummer before he found Earth, Wind, and Fire. In 1966, NEA jazz master Charles Lloyd recorded which of the following albums for Atlantic Records? Would that have been A, Of Course, Of Course, B, Dreamweaver, C, Forest Flower, D, Manhattan Stories, or E, Love-In?
So I think, I'm just trying to remember the albums, but I think the album that he recorded for Atlantic was Forest Flower.
So you're going to go with C, Forest Flower.
Flower, yeah.
That is incorrect. Conrad has an opportunity to steal this one. Conrad, in 1966, NEA jazz master Charles Lloyd recorded which of the following albums for Atlantic Records? A, Of Course, Of Course, B, Dreamweaver, C, Forest Flower, D, Manhattan Stories, or E, Love-In?
I'm in Manhattan, so I think it would make sense if the answer is going to be Manhattan Stories.
That is incorrect. Brian was close, but actually, Brian, Charles Lloyd recorded Forest Flower in 1967.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
In 1966, he recorded B, Dreamweaver.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. NEA jazz master, bassist, and band leader Charlie Haden made his first recordings with what musician? Was it A, Hampton Hawes, B, Paul Bley, C, Art Pepper, D, Ornette Coleman, or E, Archie Shepp?
Well, you mean like studio recordings? Because I think that he was on the radio as a little kid.
Studio recordings, yes.
Yeah.
not the family band.
Okay, not the family yodeling band. I got you.
Right.
Yeah, Charlie is one of my, if not my absolute favorite bass player. He has such an earthy tone, and his presence and it is noted whenever he's on a recording. I love his sound. I'm not a bassist. I play saxophone, but I love Charlie Haden's sound. And I know that he has worked with a lot of these, if not all of these folks. But I vaguely remember him going out to California and meeting this guy saying, "Hey, come to my loft and let's jam on some tunes." And he said it was like summertime. It was like 100 degrees. And when he knocked on this guy's door, he was wearing like a fur coat. And he said, "Oh my God, this guy's crazy." There was sheet music everywhere strewn about the whole apartment. Just original things that this guy had written. And he said, "I knew I was in the right place when we started to play." And that guy was D, Ornette Coleman. And I think that's the answer.
That is incorrect. And Brian with a chance to steal the point. Brian, I'll repeat the question. NEA Jazz Master, I need to repeat the question for our audience.
Yep.
NEA Jazz Master, bassist, band leader Charlie Haden made his first recordings with what musician? Would that have been A, Hampton Hawes, B, Paul Bley, C, Art Pepper, D, Ornette Coleman, or E, Archie Shepp? And D, Ornette Coleman, has been eliminated.
So I believe that this recording was also a live recording. And I know it wasn't Hamp because he got to record with Hamp. He played with Hamp a lot, but he got to record with him later. And I'm not sure when he would have recorded with Shepp. It would have been when he got to New York, I think. So I'm pretty sure that it's with Paul Bley. And it was sort of the nucleus that actually became the quartet that backed up, that became the Ornette Coleman Quartet without Paul Bley, actually. Right.
That is correct. The correct answer is B, Paul Bley, and they recorded together with Charlie Haden's first recordings in 1957. NEA Jazz Master saxophonist Donald Harrison, also known as Big Chief Donald Harrison, was awarded an honorary doctorate degree in 2021 by which of the following schools? Was it A, the University of New Orleans, B, Southern University, C, Berklee College of Music, D, Manhattan School of Music, or E, Rutgers University?
Wow. I don't really follow the honorary doctorate scene, but I'm always willing to accept one any day. I'm waiting for it. But in the meantime, I'm just going to take a stab at this and hope for the best. I always go with C when I don't know the answer, and it's going to be C.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, and with one fell swoop, Conrad ties the score.
I knew it.
It was indeed Berklee College
There
of
you go.
Music.
I knew it.
You ready, Thomas?
Sure.
All right. National Endowment for the Arts Jazz Master, composer, bandleader George Russell, as a young man, joined a band called the Collegians. That was a band that was a breeding ground for jazz greats like Ben Webster, Coleman Hawkins, Frank Foster, and Benny Carter. That band, the Collegians, was part of which of the following institutions of higher learning? Would that have been A, Oberlin College, B, Wilberforce University, C, Tuskegee Institute, D, New England Conservatory, or E, Howard University?
Gee, I really don't know. I got to be honest, but it's hard to imagine all those people making a trek to some of those places, Oberlin College and whatnot. George Russell, I'm going to just guess with D, New England Conservatory.
It is not New England Conservatory, though that is where he wound up teaching
Okay.
in his last years. Nathan with a chance to win the game. Let's see, Nathan. NEA Jazz Master, composer, bandleader George Russell, as a young man, joined a band called the Collegians, a band that was a breeding ground for jazz greats like Ben Webster, Coleman Hawkins, Frank Foster, and Benny Carter. That band, the Collegians, was part of which of the following institutions of higher learning? Was that A, Oberlin College, B, Wilberforce University, C, Tuskegee Institute, D, New England Conservatory has been eliminated, or E, Howard University?
Ooh, I'm kind of with Thomas on this. I know all the names, but geez, this is a doozy of a question, Willard.
That's what we get for sudden death. Ooh.
The agonizing sudden death.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with Thomas. I'm trying to just check things in my brain for this question. Okay, D has been eliminated. So, and I know two of these universities' histories pretty relatively well. So I'm trying to process of elimination this thing. So I'm actually going to go with B, Wilberforce University.
And that is correct.
Congratulations.
That is correct. And you know, you went through a good process of elimination. You know, that might have been the most unlikely of the institutions, and you came up with it. So congratulations to Nathan Holloway on another win. We encourage everyone to try your hand and play Jazzology. And if anyone watching would like to become a contestant on Jazzology, click the link below and simply fill out the form. You must be 18 years old or older, and be sure to follow us on social media at Jazzology Trivia Show to get all the latest news and updates. And if you missed the show live, you can find the archives on the Savage Content YouTube channel. And we will catch you all the next time.